Today, we're going to be talking about the collective bargaining agreement, what it means, what it looks like for 2026, and what I would still be thinking about if I was a player today. And if you want a video that's outside of the political theater that we see on ESPN, this is going to be one of the best videos you've watched. And I know this because I've lived this. I got drafted in 2009 as a 9th overall pick in the draft, and I played until 2019. And what that means is I played under 3 different collective bargaining agreements. And each one of those had different rules, had different stipulations, and ultimately affected the contracts that I signed. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what's on the table for 2026 and exactly what I would be thinking about if I was still playing in the league today. Let's dive in. So let me set the stage for you. May 27th, 2026. The Major League Baseball Players Association comes out with their first proposal for the new collective bargaining agreement. And in it, they have things like they want an increase in players' minimum salary. They want to see a competitive integrity tax so that teams that are not spending the money that they should be spending are spending more to make the league more competitive. And they want an outcome that sounds so similar to what the MLB owners are saying. They want more competition. They want a better product on the field, and they want to keep all the momentum that Major League Baseball has today. Well, a few days later, the MLB owners respond with their first proposal. And in this proposal, their document looks a lot different than the Players Association. They want things like a floor and a salary cap, but they're saying they want the same outcome. They too want to keep the momentum that they have going. But to understand how we even got to this place, I need to take you back. I need to take you back to 2009. In 2009 was my very first year in Major League Spring Training. And outside of what it meant to be on the field as a major leaguer in spring training, it also meant being a major leaguer in that clubhouse. And in that clubhouse, we had the Major League Baseball Players Association come in and speak to us every single year. I didn't really know what that meant as an 18-year-old, but I'll never forget seeing some of the veteran players stand up. And they didn't talk about the details of the CBA that year, but what they did talk about was the stories of players that came before us. Players that had made the sacrifices, had the lockouts, had lost money, in order that players today could be earning the guaranteed salaries that they were earning today. On the flip side of that, you have owners who, for the most part, have worked very hard their entire lives to build incredible businesses, to be able to have the money, to be able to buy Major League Baseball teams. And the interesting tie-in here is both of these groups of people want the same outcome. They want baseball to continue to thrive. Now, how they want to go about it in the CBA is where it gets into the nitty gritty. And that's the second piece that we're going to talk about is what does the CBA actually look like? But I want you to understand it from a player's perspective. What does it actually change? I'm going to share with you how it actually changed contracts for me. You see, it's so easy to see these numbers on ESPN, to see these proposals thrown out, and on a 60-minute SportsCenter show, somebody to quickly talk about them. But what we need to understand is what does it actually look like on a day-to-day basis? So I mentioned that I signed in 2009. That was under a previous collective bargaining agreement. And one of the things that was really unique about that collective bargaining agreement was that in the Major League Baseball draft, it was a bit like the Wild Wild West. There was no hard slotting system like there is today. What that means is when you got drafted, the team that drafted you, they could pay you whatever they felt like you were worth. Whereas today, there's a very small window that a team can pay you. They can pay you a little bit more and a little bit less, but there's pretty much a dollar amount that's assigned to every single pick. When I signed, that wasn't the case. And it allowed me to sign a contract for millions of dollars more. So you might ask yourself, why did that change in the next CBA? That's a big thing you need to understand, that with any of these CBAs, like any negotiation, there's give and take. So one thing that the Major League Baseball Players Association gave up in the following collective bargaining agreement was they allowed MLB owners to have a slotting system with the draft. And what this meant was for players that were now getting drafted, they were going to get paid based on where they got picked, as opposed to what I would say based on what their actual value was to that team. So this was a huge benefit to owners. But with that, owners gave up something else. If you think about that next collective bargaining agreement, there were players like Kris Bryant, who had all this service time manipulation, where they were great players in the minor leagues. But teams didn't want to call them to the big leagues too fast and start their service time clock. So what did players push for? Well, players pushed for the fact that if owners called you up earlier and you won awards like the Rookie of the Year and some of these other awards, the team would actually get compensated with extra draft picks, which is a massive value for them. You see how there's this constant give and take with these collective bargaining agreements? But you need to understand how this actually affects players' lives. We're talking about the difference between a player making $40,000 in the minor leagues or $780,000 in the big leagues. We're talking about a player not having their service time clock started to being able to start earning a pension that at maximum amount is $290,000 per year. These are huge, huge swings for players, and they're huge swings for owners. So what do players and owners actually want out of this new collective bargaining agreement? Well, there's going to be a ton of political theater, but the thing that they actually want is the same thing. You see, baseball is at an all-time high. There is more momentum for the game than ever before. Stadiums are fuller, fans are watching more, and teams are playing better. But there's this interesting thing that's starting to happen, is we're starting to see teams at the top totally break away from teams that are at the bottom. We're seeing teams like the Miami Marlins spend next to nothing, and we're seeing teams like the Los Angeles Dodgers spend hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, as a player, the one thing that I love more than anything is seeing owners like Steve Cohen with the New York Mets actually put their money where their mouth is. They say they want to win, and they went out and they signed players. And the thing that I think is interesting is you could make an argument either way. But when I look at this new collective bargaining agreement, when I look at some of the new elements that both the Players Association and the owners are proposing, I think there's arguments to be made on both sides. On the Players Association side, what we're looking for is we want to make sure that players are getting paid more money and getting paid faster. Because the thing you have to understand as a fan is for a player to actually get paid hundreds of millions of dollars in free agency, like you might see on ESPN, that's a decade-long journey. From the time that they get drafted to the time that they get 3 years of service time just to get to arbitration, 3 more years to reach big league free agency. And oh, let's not forget, they have to be competing and performing at the absolute highest level that entire time to even have a chance to sign that $100 million contract. So yeah, from the player side, we want to get paid quicker and we want to get paid more of what our value is earlier on in our career. And from the owner side, they want to see a more competitive landscape. They want to see money being pooled together as opposed to a team on the coast like the New York Yankees being able to make hundreds of millions of dollars more than maybe a small market team. And I think that generally makes sense. Now, should there be a salary cap to do that? I personally don't think so. But I do think there's an element here where there can be some give and take, where we can see the owners come together and start to pool some of their assets like you see in the NFL or like you see in the NBA. And I could see some give and take on the player side where we say, we want to get paid a little bit more sooner, but maybe there's a little bit more of a fluctuation of what that looks like down the road. But you see, outside of a boardroom, outside of a legal document, what players that are playing today actually need to be thinking about is there is incredible money on the table. And there's incredible planning opportunities that if you don't do these right, you might be kicking yourself come next April. Because we've already seen this happen in the past where teams have locked out players, where players are not earning a salary. Now, the Players Association has a war chest of money that they will help supplement players if there is a lockout. But it's certainly not a massive contract like somebody's making $5, $10, $15, $20 million a year, and they're actually getting paid that. So if you're a player out there, you need to be thinking strategically around this with your money. One thing that we're telling players right now is you need to start developing your own war chest, your own bucket of cash, because there's a lot of these things, a lot of these factors that no matter how strongly you feel about them, they're going to be completely outside of your control. And the one thing that I do know from a player's perspective is that every single player out there in this next collective bargaining agreement will be signing contracts that will change the course of their entire career, but they'll be based on these negotiations. And if you're a fan out there, the thing that I want you to understand is this. Yeah, you might see a headline on ESPN, but what you need to understand is the backstory of how we got there. I shared that story of what it looked like to be in the clubhouse, to hear veteran players talking about the sacrifices that they made. But let's not forget that we have humans on both sides of this. We have players who have earned the right to make tens of millions of dollars a year. They've made incredible sacrifices through their life, and they have incredible God-given ability. And on the other side, we have owners who, for the most part, are incredibly sharp business people. And they want the best business model for them, which I can respect. We all have to come together and say, we have an incredible amount of momentum today with Major League Baseball. And I, for one, want to see that keep going. If you like this sort of thing, if you like these inside looks at Major League Baseball, if you like these inside looks at sports, business, and money, if you want to get smarter with your money, make sure you follow along. That's what this channel is all about. Until next time, my friends.